I do think we're in this perma-crisis situation, and I do think economically it's going to be tough for the next 18 months at least. I don't think we're going to see any relief till 2025. I don't have a crystal ball, but when I talk to economists and analysts in our sector, that's what they're saying. So there's still a bit more pain to come, particularly if there's more interest rate rises.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. My guest today is Paul Zahra, the CEO of the Australian Retailers Association. Paul is a leading figure of Australian retail, having worked in the industry for 40 years, including in senior executive and non-executive roles and as a company advisor. Paul has previously held senior leadership positions at Target, Officeworks and at David Jones, where he was the CEO and Managing Director. Paul leads the team at the Australian Retailers Association, which is Australia's oldest, largest and most diverse retail body, representing a $400 billion sector that employs 1 in 10 Australians. During our chat, Paul shares his assessment of the health of Australian retail, strategies we can embrace to embark on the future of retail, noteworthy shifts and trends such as sustainability, AI, innovation and technology, marketplace intelligence, insights, and the enormous benefits of becoming an ARA member. I enjoyed every minute of this chat with Paul, and no doubt you will too. So let's dive in. Paul, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
It's so fabulous to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you for asking me to be part of your podcast.
Oh, you are welcome. Now, Paul, to set the scene, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and share some insights into your amazing journey in the retail industry before becoming the CEO of the Australian Retailers Association?
Well, look, it's a really lovely way to start, I guess, because I started my career fell into it. I started as a casual shop assistant at the local Target store, actually in Sunshine in Victoria. I come from a very working class Maltese family. And the minute I started, whilst I was studying, I fell in love with retailing. And it was partly because I felt it was a place where, and particularly in fashion, where dreams can come true. And, you know, they say clothes maketh the man. And I think that's a really true saying, because we can use fashion to express ourselves. And that's what drew me into the industry. And look, the rest is history for me. I continued on my journey. I didn't get the opportunity to go to university. I had to learn on the job. I was a store manager at the age of 22, so very early in the piece at Hoppers Crossing. Most of the staff were older than me. So it was sort of setting new ground. And then I worked my way through did various senior roles through Officeworks, through Target, of course, but Officeworks, and then on to David Jones. And then the rest is history. That was sort of the pinnacle of my career as the head of a publicly listed company, where I was really amongst the fashion set. So an exciting time. And I decided, after department stores are going through lots of complex restructuring, after my time at David Jones, I went off to do some advisory work in retail and in diversity and inclusion. And then this role came up. I've been doing it just before COVID hit. And it's a really great role because it's a true leadership role. I get to sort of advocate and represent the retail industry in the media. So it puts me in a really good place to actually give back to the industry, to be honest. And that's why I love what I'm doing.
Oh, what a amazing grounding in the industry, Paul. I'm so excited. There's some synergy there between you and I. So Sunshine, just around the corner from where I grew up. You were working at Target. I was working at Kmart.
Oh my goodness. Well, there you go. And discount department stores back in the 80s, people, they may look at it very different today, but they were setting new ground. They were making fashion accessible for people. And I really loved my time at Target. I'm sure you did at Kmart as well. And,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you sort of think that, it gave everyone the opportunity to access, a wardrobe at affordable prices. So I really loved my heritage there. And of course, when I went into premium retailing, I loved it even more because, of course, as my my own wallet grew, I was able to afford nicer and bigger things. But yeah. So interesting here that that there are synergies there. Sunshine might be a good breeding ground for good retailers there.
Oh, I think it is. Well, I stayed at Kmart for around 12 years. My journey was definitely on the shop floor and then into the buying office. They trained me to become a retail buyer, and it was a very family orientated culture back in the day. And I think it was such an amazing grounding. I look back now, you don't really appreciate the experience when you're in it, but then when you look back, you're like, wow, I don't actually think that model exists today. Things have changed significantly, some for the good, some we're still adapting to these changes.
Agree.
But,
Look, I also think that it gave me I think discount department stores have such strong disciplines that it gave me the disciplines, not only from a professional point of view, but in my personal life as well. So I'm very grateful for what Target did for my career.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's talk about current day, Paul. So as CEO of the ARA, the oldest, largest and most diverse national retail body, representing a $400 billion sector and employing 1.3 million Australians. Could you walk us through a typical day in your role?
Well, this is a hard question because it's really difficult to describe what typical is at the ARA. I can describe it as hectic because there is, as much as I'm a very disciplined and structured individual, I often have to jump to the news of the day. So with all things planned, things can go seamlessly, but often that they don't, because it could be a retailer that has been that's under the eye of the media scrutiny that I've got to go in and support with. Often in the background, sometimes front facing. I'm a regular on facing the news for the day. So media is a big part of the job, and it can be quite disruptive. But I have a good EA that makes sure that I get through my day and actually get to it. Most of the work is around policy and advocacy. When you think about government at all levels, state, local, state, and federal, you need a voice for the industry, and that's what the ARA does. And we're often the go-to person for ministers wanting to drive policy changes or legislation changes so that they hear what the retail industry's got to say. As the largest private employer, we can't let our voice be unheard. Often, particularly in the areas of industrial relations reform, that can be scarring to a business if not done correctly, and not mutually benefiting. And particularly for small business that do it particularly tough. We've got our eye on making sure that small business can survive. The fashion industry, is one in Australia that is predominantly driven by small business operators, and they're really important to the creative juices of the industry, and is out advocating and protecting their rights. On top of that, we do all sorts of other things. So I'm involved in that. We have a retail institute that does education and training. That was really important through COVID, around infection control and managing customer aggression, right through to research and insights to help the industry make informative decisions.
It's so diverse, Paul, and I would say quite complex, your role. Yes, at the heart of it is the advocacy. As you said, you are there to support the retailers in our industry, but legislation, policy, media demands, it would be very, very dynamic, complex and demanding. Just around legislation and policy, that would have been a huge shift, I imagine, from working in retail to switching to that side of things. What support? How did you upskill around that? How do you get through those kind of demands of the role?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you why. Because when I reflected on my retail career, I didn't want to stepping into this job was to take on running another retail operation, because I felt I'd done it. I knew it really, really well. I was repeating my sort of skill and capability, and I wasn't learning anything myself. So one of the things I reflect on my career is that when you go to that next job, look for something that you're not so good at, and then you've got something to learn. And for me, that was it, was the policy, the government relations side of it. I didn't have any experience in policy advocacy in government relations, and I wanted to give it a shot. Now it's been sort of hitting 3.5, going to 4 years now. And of course I've mastered it, but it comes down to managing relationships. And I think when we talk to government, we try to find win-win outcomes. It's not about you just sort of advocating for stuff with the government that is one-sided. You've got to look to solve the nation's issues, whether that's around industrial relations reform, or just it could be legislation to do with pharmaceuticals or the size of a battery button. We have really diverse requests and submissions to policy that we put through, but we try to find, and that's really the key, is learning to do win-win. So, if you take that a step further, that's really the key to any relationship in your own personal life, but also in your professional life. If you can find ways that you can compromise and find a win outcome, and that's really the mastering of a relationship, particularly when it comes to government.
Yeah, amazing. Now let's talk about the current climate of retail in Australia. So, Paul, if I was to ask you to take the pulse of Australian retail at the moment, how would you assess its health?
Well, look, it's a roller coaster ride. That's probably the best way for me to start to describe the retail industry. Those of you that have been in it for long enough will understand what I mean. But I say it's challenging, and it's always been challenging for different reasons. And I think right now we're in a state of what I call perma crisis, or this permanent crisis situation. Retail is an incredibly resilient community, and when I think about the last couple of years, performance did surpass all expectation during and post the pandemic, because in fact we were stimulated predominantly by government money and we were in lockdown. So we were out indulging, we were making sure we were shopping online, we were making sure that we were managing our mental health through, through lots of indulgences through that pandemic. Online did exceptionally well during that period. And we had about 16 months of year-on-year sales growth, consecutive sales growth. Really, freedom spending really drove these results, and people rewarded themselves after an intense and challenging period. The desire to get out and indulge the senses remained a constant. The appetite for spending was at an all-time high in up until last year, and it was really facilitated by robust household savings levels and wage growth. So that was what drove it most, and this was beneficial. But these strong headline results masked the uneven impact of post-pandemic recovery across the sector, particularly for small business in those at-risk categories and regions. So now what we're seeing right now, and that's this year, predominantly this year, as we went into 2023, we're seeing the tide turn. Discretionary spending is slowing. Retail sales growth is returning to levels more consistent with the rate of inflation. And those economic headwinds, such as interest rate increases, inflation, the rising cost of living, they've prompted this slowdown in consumer spending. So whilst we talk about a cost of living crisis, we also have to talk about a cost of doing business crisis, because many retailers are under enormous financial pressure with rising operating costs across the board. Supply chain costs have increased, utilities have increased, rents have increased as landlords have tried to claw back the pandemic years, and just generally, and of course, labour has increased as well. So, the short summary of that is this perma-crisis situation that we're having to constantly pivot towards, and that can be frustrating and challenging, but it can also drive innovation.
Permanent crisis. I don't think anyone's going to be too pleased to hear that term being used, to be honest. But what are some of the strategies that you see that are being embraced to help mitigate what we're going through at the moment? No doubt retailers and brands have to be very quick on their feet. We're hearing the word pivot. I don't think we've stopped hearing pivot over the last few years. But is there anything that you're kind of seeing that's coming through quite consistently as kind of the crisis management strategies, Paul?
Yeah, look, I think there's no doubt that every business has done like a full cost review to see that there's any way that they can remove cost or reduce cost and be more efficient, to make sure that every time we take a price increase, you've got the risk of losing a customer. So retailers don't like taking price increases, but they have to do it. And so obviously price increases is one way to manage and be sustainable. I think the other big aspect to this as we're leading through this period, because I do think we're in this perma-crisis situation, and I do think economically it's going to be tough for the next 18 months at least. So I don't think we're going to see any relief till 2025. I don't have a crystal ball, but when I talk to economists and analysts in our sector, that's what they're saying. So there's still a bit more pain to come, particularly if there's more interest rate rises. When I looked at a diagram recently, you see the escalating cost of labour, but you see the de-escalating costs of technology. So if there's a way to find a technological solution to actually reduce cost, we should be thinking about that. Now, if you're a large business, that's a little easier to do because you've got more capital to expend. So some examples, and the most recent example, Coles spent $1 billion on their warehousing in Queensland, and about 90% of that, the product going through, just over 90% of the product going through the warehouse is actually is touched by robots. So the other 10% is human. So you can sort of see where we're heading. There's this race to reduce labour costs and making sure that the labour that's being employed is doing stuff that computers are not great at doing, and that's the emotional connection with customers predominantly. If you're a small business, you've just got to be really efficient and think about the best way to add value. So mitigating, you need to look at the best way to get your costs down. And once you're satisfied, that customers are going to be looking for value. So whether that's through you discounting, promoting, you need to be competitive, but most importantly, you've got a value offer. Now, if I'll use a fashion example, but if you're a designer that deals in the premium end of the market, you need to have a value offer if you want to be able to survive through this period. Another example, to give you some sense of it, during COVID, a lot of none of us were dressing up for events. So and that means that anything to do with suits for men or evening gowns for women, nobody purchased them because we weren't going anywhere. So a lot of those companies survived, pivoted towards casual wear, because we're all at home in our pajamas, in tracksuit bottoms, and they did that. And some of them have continued doing those and providing a more premium version, but this sense of value has got to be brought through, and having that value offering is important. So then you do have an income continuing through, and that's the main strategies people should be thinking about: ways to reduce costs, ways to actually offer value, because every household or most households in the country are under significant pressure, and they're looking at ways to get their dollar to go further.
Amazing. Some great advice there. I'm sure that our listeners will be taking notes furiously through what you just shared there, Paul. And of course, you're at the forefront and you're seeing this play out in real time on a daily basis. So really sound insights to take notice of for our audience. Are there any other noteworthy shifts or changes that we should mention that you've been observing over the last few years that have really been coming to life in our industry?
Well, look, the biggest trend is that environmental consciousness is on the rise. So sustainability and aligned values have become crucial for retailers. Customers are seeking out products that promote sustainability and reduce harm to the environment, and beyond saving the planet, social responsibility is at the forefront of customers' minds. So this new breed of customer demands more from retailers and is willing to pay a higher price to support companies that align with their values. So, we've got less money to spend. So customers generally are saying, well, who aligns with my values, and environmental aspects play a big part. So, it's so important that retailers work hard to secure those customers. I mean, the power of social media and digital communication has made it easier to research and compare companies' practices. So customers are much more informed today than they've ever been. They're much more discerning in purchasing decisions, and they're creating a higher standard for retailers to meet. So retailers are investing in sustainability and aligned values will have a significant advantage in attracting and retaining customers. So that's a really, really important point. And these customers are more likely to return to a brand that aligns with their values and prioritize products that are sustainably made. So research has shown that customers are willing to pay more for products that promote sustainability and ethical labor practices. So important that, if you haven't got a plan when it comes to sustainability, or you're a startup and most startups have already are operating in this new world. If you need help and resources, we do have a sustainability resource centre on our website, on the Australian Retailers Association. So that's www.retail.org.au. So that may help some of your listeners.
Amazing. Yeah, I could not agree more with that being such a significant, well, it's not really a trend now. It's basically something that is a non-negotiable to be embraced into future business models. And I'm glad to hear that the ARA has some resources to support around that topic. I know that you're speaking at the Global Sourcing Expo next week, and so am I. And my topic is on the conscious fashion blueprint. So I'm going to be sharing all things around, well, sustainability, transparency, circular fashion, social and environmental impacts, the whole gamut. So
Oh, wow.
I just think, educating in this space, and certainly from our perspective, sharing our clients' experiences that come to life in real time is very powerful for those who are either at the ground floor of building up their business strategy, or they're an established business that is starting to integrate more sustainable practices. So, very much on the same page there.
And I do think those that have chosen not to, and look, there are many retailers that are even ARA members that have chosen not to get on the sustainability journey. And without a doubt, if they're not, they're going to be left behind. It's no different. Sustainability, to me, is the next biggest disruptor, and we're experiencing it now. And it reminds me of my time during the department store period where, we, and hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit about this, but, the majority of the board were men. Most shopping is done by women. 75% of discretionary purchases are done by women. And nobody saw the digital disruption coming. So we thought people would not buy a pair of shoes or a dress online. And as a result, the rest is history, because many department stores were left behind and they weren't able to change quickly enough. These are big organizations that, unless you're on the journey early, now they've recovered to a certain extent. However, the journey is real, and it's now, and customers will not accept product in the future where they know modern slavery was involved, or that there's not sustainable practices in place. So really important that those listening, that if you don't have a plan, you get one pretty quickly, and that you get on the bus, because you'll be left behind.
Couldn't agree more. And I think all of the data and statistics points in that direction. So if you haven't started yet, anyone who's tuning in, it's time to definitely move swiftly in this space. I think you've just made such a significant point, Paul, about looking at the history of our industry and significant moments in time where there have been huge shifts. And sometimes it takes us a little while to kind of calibrate to that. I mean, who can even remember a time where, online retail wasn't a thing? It's like, and there was still, there still were non-believers in the last couple of years. It's like, oh no, we could never shift our business online. Of course, COVID sped that up pretty quickly. And that point's been proven many times over. So yes, sustainability, conscious fashion is absolutely, it's on the radar now, and one to be addressed.
And look, I think it's going to be an interesting point you raised too. When you look back at the history of the pandemic, I think none of us will ever want to live through that again. But what it did do, it did accelerate trends that were already occurring. Now, apparently, according to Australia Post, like post the pandemic, there were an additional 2 million households that shopped online that never did before. So, that's phenomenal. Now, there's most of the retail trends that were occurring, the digitization side of it particularly, was absolutely accelerated during the COVID years. Because we're forced into. Now, what we're seeing right now is this cost of living crisis is going to accelerate this move to environmental and sustainable products, because we now, if you had $100 in your pocket now, it's more likely to be, $80 for all varying reasons, and you get to choose one item. And if that's the case, you're going to be a bit more discerning on what you spend that money on. So really important aspect of this next wave of change that we're now seeing.
Yeah, more about quality rather than quantity. That's a great kind of vision for everyone to have in their mind. Rather than having that $100 in your pocket, you're looking at about 80. So everyone's got less, so they're going to be more discerning with the way that they're spending their dollars. Paul, your knowledge in this space is so rich and diverse. So we're very, very interested to know where you and your team gather your marketplace intelligence from. And based on what you've already shared, what other areas should retailers stay on top of, and where should they get this information from apart from the Australian Retailers Association?
Look, so we're fortunate. We have such a diverse membership base. We do go from hairdressing to hardware and fashion to food and everything in between. So our members are the greatest source of real-time intelligence for us, to be really frank. And I guess beyond that, ARA also has a portfolio of partners who provide us with best-of-breed insights and data about the industry. Now, a lot of this stuff, again, hop on the website. We provide a lot of information that's a free resource. We are a not-for-profit, and this is our way of giving back to the industry, but we do encourage people to become members because they get to access more richer information. So, we have partners such as Roy Morgan, who provide projections for upcoming retail events. We've been also working with Westpac Data X and MasterCard for sales analysis. American Express, who are our principal partner, they give us insights around the health of small businesses in particular. AusPost, Australia Post have been amazing for e-commerce insights. Deloitte for overall market analysis and future trends. Economic insights from MST Marquee, which are a boutique analyst firm. And of course, we use publicly available information like the Australian Bureau of Statistics. We also have a partnership with Queensland University of Technology for customer trends and insights. And we also, you can't go past Afterpay for Gen Z insights in particular. So the data comes from a lot of sources. It's a jigsaw puzzle, if you will. We then put those puzzles together to tell the story. And the story currently is that discretionary spending is slowing and retailers will need to adapt and evolve to succeed. And it goes back to planning ahead, embracing technology, but building loyalty and rapport with your customers is paramount in this current economic climate. So aligning with changing customer values becomes a really, really important message.
Yeah, amazing. Let's talk about that membership experience while we're on this topic. So is there a portal, Paul? So when someone becomes ARA member, do they access a portal? Do they get special invitations to events? What's the experience like?
So look, it's a much more fulsome. We also, we start with micro businesses at $99. So it's not expensive. And it's whilst we call it a membership fee, it's really a membership contribution to the greater good of the industry. And it goes right up to big retailers. Now, we are 95% small to medium-sized businesses. The 5% include all the major retailers, and they range from Woolworths and Coles to David Jones and Myer to all the majority of the specialist fashion and retail stores. And the portal, there's free information on there, which is usually the public information stuff. And then there is, particularly if you've got staff, that you're employing staff, when you go beyond being a micro business into a small to medium-sized business, we have an HR ERMS, employment relations portal, that gives you all the information they need to know. There's a hotline that you can call if you get stuck with IR issues. We're trying to take all the thinking and the hard work from a small business operator in a consolidated central phone line, which helps businesses get along. So most members that join us speak very highly of us. We have a high net promoter score, and that's because they get access to information and service. And look, at the end of the day, if we can't solve your problem, then we're not doing our job. But if we don't know the person to solve the issue, we know somebody that knows somebody that can solve the issue. And we go from anything from tenancy and lease issues. We have really amazing partners with Hitch Advisory that helps with negotiation of leases. So we're a one-stop shop for the retail industry. That's the way people should think about it. And look, I spent most of my career in organisations that weren't ARA members. Now I look at it and think, I'm not sure why they weren't. But now I think the pandemic, again, I'll be grateful for it, because you never waste a crisis. And during that crisis, the majority of retailers joined up because they wanted to be part of something bigger and have a voice in solving the country's issues. So the portal is available for members. It gives them full access to all the data and all the information I just talked through just a little earlier.
I think being part of something bigger is key, and being able to tap into an ecosystem like that, Paul, is absolutely invaluable. Resource rich, collective, minds, thought leaders, change makers, it's all there.
And it's all that stuff. So you get invited to lunches, and we have breakfasts, and we have awards nights, and we do all these sorts of things where we bring the community together. We run a scholarship program every year for women that want to progress their career, particularly into a CEO's role. We've partnered with CEW for that. It's very much a networking and learning environment. We have a retail institute that's been going for 30 years, to accessing all those courses. Often are government funded as well, so there's can be no fee or a nominal fee. These are all things that you get access to. So it's I can't encourage you enough to at least inquire, because it's worth getting involved with the greater community.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put all of the information in the show notes so that our listeners can definitely explore those amazing assets that are available to them. Now, Paul, we spoke about sustainability and the shifts, the significant shifts in that space. There's a lot more happening, not only in the retail space, just in industry, in lots of industries in regards to AI, the metaverse, technology. Have you got any insights in terms of how AI in particular, that seems to be the one most topical at the moment, is going to be embraced and utilised across our industry?
I love this question because I've been asked it before, and I think most retailers are seeing it as a real potential negative, and I see it as so exciting. So exciting, because I think artificial intelligence, and just let's stick with that for the moment, is going to take away, improve the efficiency and provide better service for retailers as it gets further and further developed. Because, you know, I'll use this example. I mean, those of you giving away my beauty secrets here, but how often have we gone to a beauty therapist, and that in that beauty therapy, you get one set of advice on your skin. You go then and speak to another beauty therapist giving you advice, and gives you contravening information, or you go and see a fashion stylist and you're told this is what you should be wearing. And in fact, through artificial intelligence, through better knowledge, we can give much more accurate information. Now, that's more at the more complex end. In the early stages, you can do all basic things like, you know, obviously answering questions around trading hours or products or etc. So it's going to revolutionize the industry. It's the next big wave of change. And what that's going to mean for all of us is that we need to embrace it, to make sure that leverage it and make it really productive. And that's the whole point. It's making sure that you're on top of these trends, so you can look at ways to improve the customer experience. When we look at technology, we should always look for ways to make the customer experience better and reduce costs. If they do both boxes, it's the right decision.
Yeah. Do you have any actual examples of how you see this being implemented already in retail? Like, is it like virtual fitting rooms? Is it, you know, bots on Facebook chat? Like, how are you seeing it?
I think all these things are exciting, because like virtual fitting rooms, I mean, how many of us really don't like going to a fitting room? Partly because I think our bodies change all the time. We get these little surprises, but it's never usually because the waistline's coming in. It's usually going out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you know, these virtual fitting rooms give you the opportunity to really expedite the service experience. So that's the big opportunity, I think, because any way that takes the grudge out of shopping. And I think about it for myself. Like I love shopping, but there's things I don't like shopping for. Suits are a good example, because I need to allocate so much time to see different suit fittings. And now you ultimately would probably need to try the item on at some point, but just trying to play a virtual fitting room can play as an editor to edit down product for you. That's what we want. We're so full of information. If you think about, we're bombarded through the day through either email and text and WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook, and so much information. If we can use these types of technology to edit for us, I think we're all going to have clearer heads and a better space. So I think that's part of it. When I went to the National Retail Federation in New York, January this year, and I was greeted by the CEO. And it wasn't him, Matt Shea, in person, it was him via a holograph. So you sort of start to see science fiction becoming science fact. I can imagine, you know, in a department store, being able to get an expert makeup artist appear in every department store, giving expert makeup advice, you know, all in one hit, how productive that makes us. But equally, we all of a sudden get access to this absolutely masterclass of information. And the same thing goes whether that's in cosmetics or fashion across the board. So I can only see technology solving problems for the industry and making this full experience. And it comes back to being seamless. So I would never be advocating to trial stuff. I think we should let other markets do that because they're bigger, but I think when it comes to technology that's been embraced by the US, virtual fitting rooms are a good example. Holographics, another good example. They've been using them also in Windows for displays. They're things that can be, once we know that they're working, we need to embrace pretty quickly and get on the bus so we're not left behind.
It's such an exciting space, and there's a few good examples there. I love the holographics. Just imagine, Paul, if your avatar could be doing a media interview right now while synchronistically you're here with me at the same time. I was reading an article about virtual runways and how this is just changing the landscape for fashion models, for example.
Yes.
So you could be based here in Australia, but your holograph could be, or your avatar is on the runway in New York right now, and there's another one going in Paris. So from even a revenue stream perspective, you just think about how many times have we said, oh, wouldn't it be great to clone ourselves? If we could only clone ourselves, life would be much better.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, that's the thing. And look, it's interesting that you say that because at the end of next week, I'm off to London.
Yep.
And please don't judge me for this, all of you listening. I do love ABBA. And I'm off to see the ABBA Voyage show, which is all avatars. And you think about it, there's a purpose-built stadium, tens of thousands of people, and there's actually no human being on stage. Actually, it's like it's mind-blowing. So you think if you're able to imagine yourself in that world, which is where we're heading, that's what we're going to see more of. You can imagine, that they can be used in a hotel check-in situation, so a lot of this will be embraced as we've had to, because we've got this rising escalation of labor costs and a de-escalation of technology costs. So you can see where the opportunities are going to exist.
It is mind-blowing where it's going, but I'm very jealous about your ABBA adventure. How exciting. Can't wait to hear how that goes. But phenomenal. What a phenomenal experience that will be. So for our listeners, definitely explore this space. It is exploding. It's exciting. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but just, keep in touch with it and watch what's happening and what's emerging in this space.
Let's just say another thing, Elizabeth. I went to an event where I had to present, and it was a lot of technical information I had to get my head around. I was sort of, worried about, did I know enough information to present on this particular topic? And I was getting my head around it, went on stage. The person that introduced me did this most amazing introduction of me. Something like I sounded so fabulous. I was thinking, I've got to give this person, it sounded amazing. And then when she sat down, who was then interviewing me, and I was still trying to get my head around the technical stuff, I said, that was an amazing introduction. Thank you so much. And she turned around to me and said, ChatGPT.
There you go.
And I'm thinking, this is beyond. How much of us have actually struggled over writing a script? Try it.
Yeah.
You go to ChatGPT and actually put a topic in, and you'll be surprised. And that's what happened. It was and I thought, well, there you go. That's been collected of all the things people have said about me, and it was all factually correct, pulled together, and it sounded fabulous. So I was happy with it.
That's becoming a daily, I think, tool in everyone's toolbox to be able to use ChatGPT to help with frameworks, help to fine-tune, articulate things a little bit better. I went to a Startup Victoria event and it was all about AI, and they used ChatGPT to actually judge each of the presenters. So they had the AI judging the AI presenters that were pitching an AI concept. It was just fascinating, and it was just so seamless and articulate. It is mind-blowing again where that is going, but that's just something that we can all use. Yeah, very, very exciting. Now, Paul, let's talk about sales and marketing. You've already shared some amazing insights around, cost savings in business, value add to customers, so many things we can be doing to fine tune and finesse our businesses at the moment. But is there anything that you have to share around sales and marketing in particular that could be an immediate kind of powerful growth opportunity for brands and retailers out there?
Sure. So look, well, firstly, I think you've got to understand your customer and what they value. I think that's the most important point. So often we think we know what the customers want, but you've really got to be really clear that you understand who your customer is, what they value. Customer loyalty, in my mind, is critical in this very competitive and dynamic market. And also much more cost effective than acquiring new customers. So if you know who you're particularly targeting, you've got those customers, loyalty is really important, that you maintain that loyalty, that customer loyalty. I think the other aspect to this is realizing, when I started, Elizabeth, in my career, it was very much around emotional intelligence and intuition. Like, we really didn't have any of the tools, and you just had a good sense of things. And I developed that, not to say that that's not important, because it really is important, but going into this world of data-driven decision-making and evidence-based decision-making is so much more important. If you can combine that EQ then with that data intelligence or IQ, you've got the best marriage. And I think it's dangerous when you've got people that are often in finance roles. They're just very data-driven. They see black and white. And I think in retail, it's not always black and white. Fashion is definitely not black and white. Like, there is grey in there as well. So I think, we do have the tech to do this, take advantage of it. I think it's a complex and competitive market. Analysing customer data from a variety of sources is important. So including sales data, customer feedback, social media analytics. They give a more solid base for decision-making. I think retailers can use data to identify trends and make predictions about future market shifts. And this does allow them to proactively adjust their strategies and stay ahead of the competition. But don't ever lose sense of that emotional intelligence or intuition, because you've got to combine that with the data aspects to make decisions. I think the other piece is really just understanding customer trends here and overseas. I mean, look, the ARA does play a major part in that for our members. But sustainability, the big theme we just spoke about earlier, diversity and equality and inclusion is really, really important. And there's a massive move towards gender neutrality, as opposed to this view of everything is black or white or male and female. These are important shifts, and retailers need to strategically plan for this. I don't think today's world can knowingly put up, if you're use a toy store example, that you say, Tonka trucks are a boys' toy, and you've got big signs up saying boys' toys, and above Barbie you've got girls' toys. It's not the way the world's changing. There's very much around being inclusive and not stereotyping people. And look, the other final point, this has really been a personal learning for me, is really around understanding in your business where the friction points are. And that's where I'm going to take my hat off as a business owner for a moment and put the customer's mindset hat on. And what do I find shopping at this place that creates friction? And I could use an example that happens for most retailers. Is just the customers hate paying for delivery, as a good example. Now, I shopped on an Australian designer website recently to do some shopping because I'm so time poor, and the minimum spend was $500. And I look at, and these were designer outfits, and most of them were around the $400, $450. And I'm sort of thinking, I've got to buy 2 items to get and nobody wants to pay for delivery because they see that as wasted money, particularly under these economic headwinds. So understanding where those frictions are, understanding ways to reduce those frictions. It comes back to less friction in your business as possible to encourage people to shop, so you don't have them abandoning in a checkout or worse still, in a store deciding to walk away. So you just got to make sure you understand where those frictions are and work out ways to actually remove those friction points for customers. And I think the delivery charges are a small but a good example.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like, when you get into the micro analysis, again, like, we all know about free shipping and the importance of it, but that was a great example that you've given there. And just with customers just becoming so much more discerning. But what I heard there was, ensure you are a customer-centric business. Sometimes we forget about the fundamentals of being in retail, being in business. And we get so overwhelmed or maybe a bit distracted with all the things going on, but we've always got to come back to the heart of our business, which is all about our customers. So that customer loyalty, thinking about the customer trends, what do we need to be doing to respond to customers' needs and wants right now based on the retail landscape. Now, Paul, let's switch channels a little bit now. No doubt that your role as CEO of the ARA is dynamic and demanding. I think we've just heard that. We can see what you're facing on a daily basis. Always like to ask this question to my guests because it really helps our audience. Many of them are solo business owners. Others are leaders of, huge organizations. But what practices, routines, and support systems do you have in place that help you with mindset and well-being, that help you to operate optimally?
Well, look, that's a really good question because I was sort of one of those people that I was never ever good at sports, at team sports, Elizabeth. So I'd be honest with you there, like I was the last person to be chosen to be on the sporting field. And the most coordination that came from me was really my outfit more than anything, to be honest. So I really love going to the gym. That's my thing. I do have a very disciplined and structured life. I'm a big fan of routines. I think routines are really important if you want to be successful. I do start the day very early to maximize my productivity and allow space to execute things before others are interrupting the day. So, as I've gotten older, I've actually gotten up earlier, not later. So that's the interesting thing. I'm up at 5 at the gym by 5:30. And I've done a workout before most people have even gotten up out of bed. I walk to work every day. The office is about a 25-minute walk away from where I live. So I try to get exercise into my day wherever I can. So if I can choose to walk, I'll do that. We have regular team meetings. I stick with it with a discipline. I put the onus on my team to make sure. I'm lucky I'm surrounded by a really talented group of people. But when they meet with me, they've got to be organized, prepared. I value my time. And that's the main thing. I don't want time wasters. So I make sure that I can get through what I need to get through. Very low on hierarchy. I'm big on results. That's the most important thing for me. And I do allow flexible work practices. I think, again, we talked about COVID and around the acceleration of trends. But what we did see was acceleration trends in retail. We saw acceleration trends in employees as well, because this whole phenomenon about working from home was just like a dream for most of us. But now we've embraced it. We want it. The ARA has a work from anywhere policy, so you can go and if you want to go and travel to the Gold Coast for a week and work from there, you can do that as long as the work gets done. That's all I'm interested in. And that's there's been a lot of push by the big retailers to force people to back to the office, and we have CBDs that are suffering as a result of it. But it's a reset, and we've got to get our head around it. Most people want to work from home Mondays and Fridays. Thursday night is now become the bigger shopping night than Friday, because people want to be, they want to be local. So particularly around city type trading. It's routine, discipline, and it comes with it's an iron hand and a velvet glove to get things done. I'm very much a big promoter of diversity, equality, inclusion, promoting gender equality specifically. So I have to practice what I preach, and that means, I don't want women that work with me that they're making their families invisible. I have this rule: if I know who on my team have got children, if they've got to go and collect their kids at 3 o'clock, 3:30, then that's fine. We don't structure meetings at that time. I generally don't like to have meetings before 9 o'clock, so I've got time to get my own things done. There's meeting times and there's focus times to get through my demands. So, I'm fortunate I've got a high, capacity, but I'm also efficient with my time. People generally don't value their time, but I do.
Yeah, I love that. So many golden nuggets there. Firstly, I love your routine and your structure and prioritizing yourself, even though you're having to get up super early to do that. I just think that is so important. And I love that you shared the flexibility that you're offering to your team as well. Just quickly, Paul, who is on the team? Who is behind this amazing organization?
Well, I've got a fabulous team. We are an not-for-profit, so we're a tiny little team. There's about 35 permanent people. We have about 40 contractors because we deliver training as well. And in that team, the two most senior people, Natalie Rosette Barber, who's the Chief Operating Officer. I've worked with Natalie previously at David Jones, and Fleur Brown, who's an expert in communications and particularly around marketing and developing a narrative and managing the media side of things, because that's a big part of what we do. Fleur is the Chief Industry Affairs Officer, and then underneath both Natalie and Fleur, we have a series of directors that pick up specific portfolios. There's a director for marketing, a director for policy, sustainability and impact, a director for finance and risk, a director for the Retail Institute, and we all work very, very close together. So we work with we use WhatsApp to communicate through the day. We're all looking out for each other. We're making sure that we get things done. We get to the end of each day. My day does start early, so by the time it sort of hits 4-ish, I'm starting to fade a little bit. I then usually operate in the late afternoons and evenings from home, so I can have an early meal, and then my team know that I'm very early to start, so they work around me. So some of them are later starters, some of them have families. So we just work out the boundaries, I guess, and work together to get things done. We're not, I've really learned again to, particularly in this job, interestingly enough, about understanding people's strengths and playing to that. I think historically, when I was a much younger manager, I looked at people's weaknesses and actually pointed them out. So I sort of now say, well, actually, we're not all perfect, and I find ways to strengthen or leverage their strengths. So I've built the structure and the portfolios around people's strengths, so they can really accelerate their careers, but equally do a great job.
I love that. I love that you've got the power of the collective behind you, such a dynamic, diverse team. None of us can do any of this on our own. And I love how you've just shared about your change in leadership style. I think that we look back, the old ways of managing are gone, and now it's about embodied leadership. And as you said, it's looking at, it's not looking at kind of what's going wrong. It's like, what's going right? What are the strengths? And let's play to those and leave the rest behind and move on. Now, Paul, just to finish up, that's gone so quick. We're at the pointy end now. But finally, in closing, if I was to ask you what excites you most about the future of retail, what would it be?
Well, look, I think there's two things I'd like to raise. I think the retail is often on the forefront of trends, and that's a really important point. If you're in our industry, it's because you love the dynamics, the shifting landscape, and the technology right now is so exciting, because I think we're seeing much more investment by companies that are not just beyond having a website now. We're sort of seeing full warehouses being done by robotics, but equally technology to improve the customer experience in store and online. And I think that's exciting. We talked a little bit about that, the holograms, the virtual fitting rooms, those types of things, and artificial intelligence. And so innovation is going to be a continuous trend, and that excites me. But I'm also excited by the challenge we face within sustainability. I think we've got a lot to answer for as an industry. When you think about the amount of, take the fashion industry, the amount that ends up in landfill, that should not be the case, And I think I spoke to a designer recently who had actually changed the way she was designing a dress to make sure that the dress was a bit more flexible to deal with changing waistlines, which we laughed about a bit earlier. But the fact that if we put on a little bit of weight, that we're not going to have to actually dump the clothing and buy something new. So it really is going to be a challenge for the industry. But I think in talking about innovation, sustainability, and making sure that that product goes beyond the life of the person that purchased it. So whether that ends up in the circular economy through a charity shop, or gets sold on, or it gets handed down, it's not this whole idea around disposability. We're moving very quickly away from that disposable economy to the circular economy. And I think that makes me so excited. The fact that we're now seeing, companies like Rolex that's saying we will sell secondhand Rolexes. So even the luxury departments or sectors are saying we've got a part to play in making sure this stuff doesn't end up in landfill, and we can take advantage of it as well to make money, but equally to look at the full circular economy. And then the final thing I'd add is probably just diversity, equality, and inclusion, because we've got such a powerful position to lead this change. And when I joined a former department store as a junior manager, the majority of the men in that on the board, the majority of the board were men, and 75% of discretionary shopping is done by women. And I think if we had equality up into the management ranks, it's okay when you look at the bottom levels of retail. So we're about 60% odd female, but when you get to the CEOs, we're only 17% female. Get to the boards, it's about 20% female. That has to change. And and I think what's exciting when I look ahead in the industry is that when we get women into those jobs who will understand the customer much better than men will ever, we will have a better industry and a much more sustainable industry.
Paul, such powerful points for you to end on. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time and your knowledge today. It took us a little while to get here, but we did it. Thank you so much. We'll be putting all of the information in the show notes. We highly encourage our listeners to check out the ARA membership, such a powerful ecosystem to tap into. And we can't wait to see what you do next, Paul. We're in your hands. We know that you're advocating the industry and we appreciate everything you do.
Oh, that's so sweet. And Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure for me too, because I'm normally used to the one asking the questions when it comes to podcasting. It's very rare that I get interviewed, and this has been special as well. And thank you for the connection.
Thank you so much. Loved it. Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. And if you'd like to find out more about our Start Your Fashion Business program and your mentor collective, head to our website fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.